Chris.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Dawson County Board of Commissioners work session. Today's Thursday, December the 17th, 2020. We appreciate those of you who are in attendance as well as those who are watching us online. We'll get right into the new business. First up, we have presentation of requests for funding for comprehensive security system upgrade. That's going to be Captain Anthony Davis and IT Director Herman Thompson. Come on up, gentlemen. Whichever one wants to go first.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. What we have for you today on the agenda is a request to fund and release an RFP for the comprehensive control and security system for the Sheriff's Office, Jail, Government Center, and Courthouse. We currently use an integrated system, a security and control system that was installed and maintained or is currently maintained by Accurate Controls. Accurate Controls is a company that's located in Wisconsin. They currently come down about twice a year and do maintenance visits and so forth. These systems were installed in the Sheriff's Office in 2007 and in the Government Center in 2011. Obviously, with advancements in technology over the years, these systems have now essentially reached the end of their life. We've been advised by Accurate Controls that we should consider a complete upgrade of the system. The parts and components of this system is becoming harder and harder to find. Over the years, we've had to pull pieces from existing equipment to ensure that we keep the systems working. We've even had to resort to buying used items off of eBay in order to keep the systems working. To give you kind of an idea of what this system does, it controls our doors, our cameras, our intercoms, the alarm systems, call buttons, our access control system, video visitation, utilities, amongst some other things. When the LAC and the jail and the Government Center was all built, this was essentially a integrated part of these buildings. So we have to have these systems running to standard in order to continue to utilize them as they were intended. We did conduct a RFI earlier this year. We had quite a bit of turnout and interest in that. We had a lot of vendors come and participate in the RFI process. We had 2 vendors submit a proposal. From that proposal, they recommended, they advised us that it would be about $1.5 million or $1.5 million to upgrade this current system. So basically what we're asking of you is to determine how to fund this project and to allow the purchasing manager to release an RFP for fiscal year 2021 with a budget of $1.5 million. Questions?
Questions?
I have a lot of questions. Who's responsible for the management of the system? Maintaining it and knowing what's going on with the system and the age of it and stuff like that.
The Sheriff's Office, we operate the system on a daily basis. Obviously, the sheriff is required to maintain a jail, and we're supposed to provide security for the courthouse. So we do operate these systems every day.
So it would fall under budget management within the Sheriff's Office, correct?
As far as maintaining the system,
As far as you're responsible, the sheriff's office is responsible for it. Let me just cut to the chase. Basic budget management. When we deal with whether it's our personal finances or a business or corporation or government, we should be looking 5 years down the road, knowing the life of this computer is 5 years. The life of any technology these days wears out. I mean, that's a given. What disturbs me the most is the fact that we're getting hit with a $1.5 million request that has not been planned for. It's the first time I've seen it, first time I've heard about it. Whoever's responsible for it should be saying 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I mean, the thing is 10 years old. The technology goes bad. Somebody should be saying, hey, we need to plan for this. We need to know that we need to hold back in capital X amount of dollars for 10 years or for 5 years. We're doing that with our computer systems throughout the organization. To get to the end of the life of a component and it costs $1.5 million and it's a surprise to the people that have to your words, come up with a way to fund it. I want the best system. I want the best protections we can have. And I'm sorry if I'm coming across, I don't mean to be directing this to you, but we have a major failure in budget management when we're staring down the barrel of a $1.5 million piece of equipment that we should have known about years ago so we can be planning our budgets, because we're the ones that have to come up with the money to be able to fund such a massive capital piece of equipment. You know, where do we come up with it? I don't know. It's easy for department heads and whoever to say we need X amount and it's an emergency. Y'all go figure out where to come up with the money. But sitting in our seat, that's a bigger challenge. And I just wish that we had a better management process in place moving forward. So I'm not surprised by a $1.5 million capital purchase. And again, I'm not aiming that directly at you, but somebody needs to own that and take responsibility for planning, better planning and communication so that we're not having to scramble to come up with that kind of capital.
well, I think that over the years, we've tried to extend the life of this system.
Sure.
In order to save money. Like I said, we've pulled parts from various different places within the facilities and
Sure.
tried to extend the life of it. I understand what you're saying about budgeting for it and saving for it over the years so it doesn't hit us so hard at one time. It is on the project list for SPLOST 7. I know that we can't count on SPLOST 7 because we don't know that it's going to be approved.
And I believe originally it was at 750, I believe.
700,000.
700, and now we jumped up to 1.5, correct?
Yes.
What changed? Where'd the 700 come from? How did we double it?
To be honest with you, sir, I don't know where the initial budget came from.
Okay.
That may have just been for the jail and the LEC side of it. But we are asking to upgrade both systems for the government center and the jail.
I know in the SPLOST 7 report, I believe it reads as courthouse security. So maybe that's that half of that piece.
Yeah, upgrade.
700,000 piece.
It may have been.
But as Commissioner Gaines said, you know, we've pushed very hard over the last 4 years to every department head to plan and to give us, you know, some time to have the opportunity to generate revenue needed to be able to fund these projects. So, you know, one of the things that we've talked about numerous times is technology is going to run out. We know that. And for us to have no plan going forward puts us in these situations. Now, I personally don't have a problem, and of course the board will take that up at the next meeting, don't have a problem with us doing the RFP to see what the actual cost is going to be. But as Commissioner Gaines said, to be able to say today that we'll fund it through this mechanism is a difficult challenge, and we'll have to look at that, obviously, to be able to come up with that kind of money. Because just to put in perspective, I'll put in perspective to what a $1.5 million project is. That's a mill of property tax by itself. That one project is a mill of property tax by itself. So that's the reason that as a group, we've got to have a better plan. Got to have everybody working on the same sheet of music for a plan. And I don't blame either one of you gentlemen for that, because neither one of y'all ain't been here that long. So it's not your fault. But, you know, you unfortunately get to be the bearers of bad news today and bring that up. And we'll have to figure out a way forward, obviously, to fix this, because it's something you got to have. So, but my recommendation to the board in 2 weeks or whenever it is we'll vote on this would be that we do the RFP process, and we'll see what that cost is, which will give us time to hopefully try to look at how we're going to come up with money to fund that. You know, obviously, as you stated, we've got $700,000 proposed for this type of stuff in Splosh 7, which we hope will go through, which would give us some form of an avenue for at least almost half of it, if it is $1.5 million. But
If you use Splosh, if you use that funding mechanism, then you have to, if it's a need now,
yeah,
you have to bond that.
We can
And
bond it.
I mean, we haven't had that conversation. I mean, we've
Yeah.
historically been running on a pay-as-you-go system, and
but there's a lot of, you know, a lot of unknowns here, obviously. I think the first unknown is let's get an actual RFP put together that's got the exact everything that you got to have. And that way we can get an exact cost of what it's going to be. Maybe $1.9 million when it's all said and done. May not be $1.5 million. It may be 1.2. I don't know. I don't want to venture out into the money portion of it without knowing what that actually is.
Chairman?
Yeah.
I know when the jail was built, when the courthouse was built, and, I think Talbert was walking through one of them, and Brandy Branson and Bob Ivy. But we had a consultant from that construction company. I'd love to see if we could reach out, let somebody come in, evaluate. I know y'all said you did it with a couple of companies, but not a company that actually does the work, but consultant comes in here and looks at it and tells us exactly what we need and possibly can point us in the right direction or who to reach out to get those bids in. The other question I was going to ask, can impact fees pay for any of that? And what do they have, Jameson? Do you know, or can you get us that and that information, what amounts they've got in there? Is that Vicky?
There's
Okay.
no money in the jail for
Okay.
impact fees.
What's
Not
part
part
of, what covers on the impact fee for public safety or law enforcement? Is it just vehicles? Nothing?
Nothing.
Okay.
Impact fees have to be used for future growth, new growth. It can't be used on current growth. You have to fund that yourself.
Okay. Just a question.
Yep. Any other questions for these two gentlemen? Thank you, sir. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Next up, we have presentation of Family Connection Physical Agent Request, Family Connection Coordinator Nancy Stotts. Nancy.
Good afternoon, Commissioner, Chairman. I'm here tonight to request that Dawson County government continue as fiscal agent in 2021. County government has been our fiscal agent since 1999, and we have appreciated every single year. Thank you for that. We have approximately about $195,000 in state grants contracts that are reimbursable each month or quarter, and it would be very difficult for us to operate on those type of grants without you as fiscal agent.
Any questions for Nancy?
Thank y'all for what you do. And I enjoyed that
Thank you.
little seminar y'all had where we went out. I guess it was, last year when it started snowing? That day we had that meeting
Oh,
of
yeah.
different agencies.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the invite on that. That was a
Good.
good day.
Thank you.
I also want to say to Miss Nancy, whether you've heard or not, Miss Nancy's retiring. And she has done an excellent job for many, many, many years. And I have the pleasure to sit on the Family Connection Board with Miss Nancy and the other people who serve on that and watch the outstanding job that they do. You will be sorely missed, Miss Nancy, and very difficult to replace. We appreciate your hard work and dedication to the citizens of this county for all that time.
Thank you. It's a partnership with the community.
Next up, we have presentation of request for approval of fiscal year 2020 Legacy Link Contract Addendum Number 1. Senior Services Director Dawn Johnson. Dawn.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. I like how Chairman Thurman said addendum number 1, because he's been around us a long time and know we get these addendums, but this is addendum number 1. This is just some extra funding that they have given us through federal and state government to help if we need any more Meals on Wheels or to feed our congregate clients. We think that we're covered because we've got some CARES funding and different things. So we think, but we don't want to turn the money down because they're giving it to us. So I would like to ask the board to ratify this tonight, and let's go ahead and accept it so we can turn it in by the end of the year and send it in and receive this addendum 1 funding if needed. And if it's not needed, it'll go back into the pool with the other 13 counties and then somewhere else if needed.
Questions for Dawn?
We like the addendums. 'Cause usually it's more money.
Yes, yes.
Any problems with moving it to the voting session?
Mm-mm.
Okay, thanks, Dawn.
Thank you.
Next up, we have presentation of Veterans Memorial Park Pavilion rental fee. Park and Recreation Director Matt Payne. Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Always appreciated for you letting me to come and speak with you about the Recreation Department and what we got going on. Just a small housekeeping item today. As you know, the senior center, the new senior center and the new pavilion have been completed. And there is a groundbreaking, or not a groundbreaking, a grand opening, ribbon cutting that will be scheduled later on. Just a little housekeeping item just to get started. We will need to set and establish the rental fees for the pavilion. Just for some numbers' sake, just so you can show like a per capita comparison. Am I hitting the wrong button? Okay. The small pavilion this is at Rock Creek. This is the one beside the splash pad. Just go to the next screen. And it's just going to show where it seats approximately 25, 30 people. We charge $35 per rental, $55 for non-residents. Small pavilion over at Veterans Park. This is the one, Veterans Park. This is the one that is beside the Recreation Center. Again, 25, 30 people, $35 for and $55 for non-residents. The next one is the big pavilion over at Rock Creek. We not only rent this one out a lot, we use this one a ton for our own programs. I think it seats about 55 to 60 residents. And again, we're right at that 65 and 85 for non-residents. The big pavilion is the Cadillac of North Georgia. It is beautiful. If you've been around pavilions, you've been around Park and Rec for a while. This is like a diamond ring. This is the top of the line in pavilions. We can see approximately 225 to 250 under there. It's a big one. I can see this one being rented out for weddings. I could see it being rented out for family reunions, big family reunions. This is a really top-notch facility. With that, your recreation board and myself did meet on December the 7th, and we discussed rental rate. They are proposing a rate of $200 for Dawson County residents and $300 for non-residents. This just kind of goes in line with the per capita that we have at the other facilities. With that, I'll be happy to take any questions and answer anything you might have.
Questions for Matt?
This is the only facility that has a restroom contiguous with the actual.
Well, no, sir. The large pavilion at Rock
Yeah.
Creek does have the
Okay.
restrooms with it,
Okay, and it looks like just,
but it is literally about 2.5 to 3 times the size. with, as you've seen, all the bells and whistles.
Yeah, and you're,
Brian Young and Mr. McKee, they did a fantastic job of putting this thing together.
looks like you're trending at about $1 per person
Mhm.
capacity. So.
And there is no rush on this, and so it doesn't need to be pushed forward tonight, just be on your consideration.
Other questions for Matt? Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, guys.
Next up, we have presentation of proposed special purpose local option sales tax intergovernmental agreement. Before I get to the county attorney, in reference to that, I wanted to have Mr. David McKee come back up and go over the new proposed list. As you recall, we talked about the purchase and acquisition of a ladder truck, which was in the Splosh 7 project list before, which was equated at $1.75 million. And so, as you know, with excess funds that we are anticipating to get from Splosh 6, we can buy that truck through Splosh 6. So we've made some changes to our list. And so, David, if you'll come up and kind of go over that list for not only just the board, but for our citizens as well.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to go through this, through the list. We did make a few changes to that list. One thing I will add to what the chairman just said, if you'll also recall, the last list that we talked about, and I believe Commissioner Gaines brought it up, it was a working list. I think it was $300,000 or $400,000, 0.8% of the overall SPLOST, short of exactly 85%. So the list that you have before you is exactly 85%. And I'll briefly go over what those changes were. We added some additional funds to roughly $200,000 additional to the administrative office renovation. We are forever busting at the seams at a lot of our offices. Many of them need renovations. Moving down the list, you'll see that the engine and ladder truck was removed. That was 1.75. That was removed from the list. So you'll see that's missing. We just talked about courthouse security upgrades. We added additional funds to that, looking into that a little bit deeper. Obviously, we need more funds. We did have 500,000. We increased that to 700,000. We increased some for our roads and culverts section there. A completely new section and doing some evaluation at War Hill Park. The paving down there is falling apart and could become a safety hazard with campers walking around and everything. So we added $200,000 for paving and working with the park folks. So we added that. And then the last thing that was added to this list was $500,000 to the public health building. The cost of construction is out of control right now with materials and everything. So we did add some cost to that so that we don't have to offset these funds, in theory, not have to offset these funds with the new public health building. That's briefly what the changes were from the previous list that the board saw.
Any questions for David?
Tier 2 projects, we feel like Tier 2 projects, I would assume, can be identified. The definition of Tier 2 is a project that benefits countywide, every resident, is my understanding. So I would anticipate that we could consider the E911 Operations Center as a Tier 2 project. And correct me if I...
We want to just go to our attorney for that.
I think that would be the epitome of a countywide project, yes.
What about the Emergency Communication Center? It's a radio that keeps all the EMS and fire and sheriff's offices or officers on the roads in constant communication to serve the community. Is that a Tier 2?
I would tend to say so if there's any reason that they're restricted to specific jurisdiction precincts as opposed to
Yeah,
they're
they're
distributed throughout. That would be the only qualification I would add to that.
Yeah, Dawson County provides all the services as far as fire, EMS, and sheriff services, and that overlays the city district incorporated as well as non-incorporated districts. So I wouldn't think that they'd be limited to
Doesn't
that.
sound like it.
Johnston, the radio system too, in the public works.
we are part of that system.
Okay, so Public Works too.
Okay. And then public health building, obviously construction of a new public health building would be to the benefit of anybody that is in the community. So I would assume that that would be a tier 2 project as well.
It sounds, from that description, absolutely.
And so my understanding is the county has the ability to, one path that can be taken is to, since those are priorities that benefit the whole community, regardless of districts or whatnot, then those potentially could be completed or deemed first and be taken off the top. So we go from a project list of potentially 60 million down to the 49. Is that
Remaining.
remaining?
I mean, I don't have the numbers.
Yeah, it's 60 million, and so
Maybe I have-
60 minus 11 would be 49 million.
The
You
number-
trust me
those
on it.
numbers.
It's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
promise
The
you, it's
numbers
right.
are correct.
It's right. The numbers are right. Okay. So that's the way that the tier 2 projects work. I just want to make sure.
I
we're
just don't
clear.
have the percentage on it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
For the record, the total tier 2 projects that were just referenced of the $51 million of the county's projects was $11 million.
That would take our.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that can be taken off the
But
top.
that comes
is
off
what
the
he's
top
saying.
of 60 million. So
Correct.
essentially it takes
Before the
down-
split.
Before you split, your tier 1s could come off, and then you're
Tier two.
not splitting 60 million on a percentage basis. You're splitting 49 million.
Correct.
Okay. You see that done quite often in these splits where your tier 1s and tier 2s are handled first?
I mean, I honestly can't say that I deal with multitudes of, it is not uncommon by
Okay.
any stretch.
And we've done that in the past, I think, with the construction of this building, which was a tier 1 project, I believe, as well as the jail, that's the way that split took place historically on the previous splash
Right.
that we dealt with. Okay. Okay.
Any other questions for David? About the list. Thanks, David. We put back on the work session to have more discussion in reference to the intergovernmental agreement. As we talked about before, the latest thing that the city sent us was an 83-17 split. That didn't address anything that had to do with tier 2, obviously. So we wanted to talk about that a little bit more. Obviously, the fact that we have it on the work sessions means that we're not going to vote on it tonight. And I wouldn't recommend a vote on it anyway with 2 of our fellow commissioners not present. But we can have some discussion in reference to that. Because going back to our county attorney, just to reiterate the rules and regulations that are associated with SPLOSH. If we don't wind up with an agreement, it defaults to the population numbers, correct?
If the county chooses to go forward with a resolution-based election or vote without an agreement, then the eventual split would be based on a population between the city and the county. That split would be, that the split in the population would be the same split that would be required after the tiers.
Chairman,
Go ahead.
which, I guess, the numbers, where they get those numbers, what census do they get those numbers from since the new one hadn't came out?
Well, the statute doesn't establish a particular census that you pull from or a specific data point. It makes the most sense to go the most recent consistent and formal census that has been taken. Right now, the argument could be that it's a 2010 census. There are, whether there are other credible updated sources of more recent, because at this point in time, we don't have the 2020 numbers. We're basing a split on 10-year-old numbers. It's possible there are other credible sources of the current population split. We could justify using a source if we find sufficient credibility with the source.
Yes, Mr. McKee.
Yeah,
Mr.
and-
McKee. 'Cause
Yeah, David
didn't you-
brought some numbers to us 2 weeks
Yeah,
ago.
2 weeks ago,
I think
that's
one
right.
from DCA and one from, I guess, the Census Bureau itself that had some
Yeah, both were
2020 numbers, and that split was somewhere around the 88-12.
Yeah, both were
number.
pulled from DCA's website. One is American Community Surveys, which was updated a couple months ago. And the other was pulled from the census, interpolated through the 2010 census. One, I believe, was 11.6% split, and the other was a 12.4% split. So
Average.
those averaged to 12.
11 point what?
11.6 was, well, let me just verify before I.
That's correct.
11.6 and the other was 12.4, and those average to exactly 12.
Average of 12.
Yes, yes, sir. And again, that was pulled straight from DCA, Department of Community Affairs website. That's the most current data they have.
Would you say that we're in somewhat of a unique situation that historically your cities are your economic engines and where you derive a lot of your sales tax revenue from in Dawson and Dawsonville's in somewhat of a unique situation where the economic engine is outside of the geographic footprint of the city. And so a population increase within the footprint of the city would be very valid for asking for additional funds if that entity provided fire, sheriff, EMS, active park and rec, library services, or some that come to my head. So an increase in population, if you're providing the services, could be a valid reason why you would use population increases as a reason for asking for more of a percentage. But the converse of that is when you have an increase in population within a footprint and you're not providing those services fall back onto the other entity, the county, to provide those services and also bear the cost of those services. The increase in population is technically a negative factor because you're increasing the cost of delivering those services. The cost is burdened by another entity, not within itself. That's where the city's population has definitely grown, as has the counties. I mean, they've both grown, I would say, almost in lockstep somewhat. And so I would venture to say the new census would probably be a very close resemblance in a percentage split. The numbers are going to be higher overall, but your percentage split should be relatively close, I would think. That's an open-ended question. I don't expect you to answer that.
I don't intend to.
Does anyone have any more questions for David?
Thank you.
How about our council? Any other questions for him?
So it's process-wise, the last thing we got from the city was they sent us a resolution that they voted on at 17%, I believe, based on their idea that higher population means more money. So it would be prudent for us at some point, now maybe not tonight without other members not being here, but at some point we should kind of solidify publicly where we're at and then send that back to them in a formal counter offer, I guess you could say.
If we do intend to proceed with a negotiation on an intergovernmental agreement as opposed to the resolution process, the next step would be to respond with some either a different number, different terms, but yeah, send something back to the city with the county's position.
Okay.
Other questions, other discussion? Okay, thank y'all. We'll move on to presentation of board appointments, Park and Recreation. Tony Keller would be a reappointment term, January 2021 through December 2024. Spencer Wright would be a reappointment term, January 2021 through December 2024. Matt? Do you need those people voted on tonight to make your next meeting?
Well, when will the next meeting be? I'm sorry.
We meet on the 21st of
Next year.
January.
They will need to be added to tonight.
Okay. All right, so you're okay with adding them to the voting session?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next up, we have and you have their information in reference to those gentlemen. They've done a good job serving us in the past, and you would say that as the park director. Next up, we have the Development Authority, Dennis Fedoric, replacing Mike Ball. That term would be January 2021 through December 2024. And as has been the custom, we asked the Development Authority to interview this person, and they made this recommendation. And Tony's here if you got any questions in reference to that. You have his resume, which is pretty good looking, if you took the time to read that. Tony, will you need this appointment before your next meeting? When's your next meeting?
Well, if this is an appointment for January, then we probably should move it just to stay consistent.
Okay. So we could add that as well, if that's okay with y'all. All right. We'll move on to the county manager report. David's not with us this afternoon. Miss Vicky's going to give that.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners. I have just a few items to present to you today on behalf of the county manager. The key indicator report for the month of November, as well as a list of agreements and contracts, is in your packet. Human Resources is working on the salary increases approved by the Board of Commissioners for 2021. Employees will see the increase in their January 29th, 2021 paycheck. Our HR Director, Brad Gould, has been attending a 12-week course through the Professional Development Academy sponsored by the National Association of Counties. He received a scholarship through the association to attend and will graduate tomorrow. County offices will be closed next Thursday and Friday, December 24th and 25th for the Christmas holidays, and on Friday, January 1st for New Year's. So that concludes the report. If you have any questions.
Any questions for Miss Vicky?
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. County Attorney report.
Mr. Chairman, I have nothing to report this time. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for our county attorney? Do we have any need for a executive session after the voting session?
I have no,
Okay.
well, actually, hang on one second. I do have an item I'd like to address, a litigation matter.
Okay. All right. We'll take that up after the voting session. All right. All right. That's all the work session business we have for today. We will take a few-minute break, and then we will be back with our voting session. Thank you for your attendance, both here and those that are watching us online. Thank you.